Welcome. Today, I'm going to share how we can navigate conversations that matter and elevate a way to authentic harmony with others. My name is Dr. Pauline Crawford, and I am the designer of something I call Gender Dynamics Intelligence. And it's an assessment tool, a navigation tool, a location tool. It's a way to understand the situations that you're in. So come with me on a journey to understand not only how to communicate, how to create conversations, but also how to work and live and enjoy life together. So whether you're in the boardroom, you're on the sports field, you're in the family home, you're away on holiday, conversations that matter are part of life's joyful journey to results in all matters. Where does this come from? Well, we have a lot of congestion at the moment about gender identity, about who we are as men and women of different cultures and ages and sexual preferences. So we start by saying whatever gender you identify with impacts the dynamics of the conversations that you hold and the relationships you form. This is very key because our goal is to help you understand the whole of life. So we start with a very simple look at, if you like, the yin and yang of life. You are either a man or a woman. You will have different levels of masculine and feminine energy, and there may be different sexual preferences that come into play. But we're looking at behavior that ends up as words and deeds and conversations and outcomes. So let's take a look at the core of gender dynamics intelligence. And remember, it's very much about the dynamic between you and other people, whatever you're doing. So you see to the left, male, to the right, female, to the top, masculine, and the bottom, feminine. As we explore this, we find out where the confusion comes and where the conflict comes. And in order to know who you are, to know others, that is our core principle of all the work that we do here in Corporate Heart International, where Gender Dynamics Intelligence is a core tool to help you navigate. But what's very important is that the way you know yourself influences how you tune into others and ultimately how you create a new narrative. Now that, as I said, might be a conversation you're having on the playing field, in the home, in business. But essentially, we are different types of archetypes. And we use archetypes because we need to have a reference point, a starting place to understand who we are. So I'm going to give you an insight here. There's the ruler who loves action, there's seeks solutions. And this is actually our masculine-minded male. We have our philosopher who loves people, seeks synergy. He's our feminine-minded male. And we also have our magician who loves ideas, seeks collaboration. She is our masculine-minded female. And our sovereign who loves feelings, seeks community. And she is our feminine-minded female. Now, of course, we may be a little bit of all of these. This is about our behavior, our core reactive behavior, and how we understand when things don't go right and what we need to do to address that. That's very important because life is not as simple as it used to be. Many, many years ago, men were the ones who were at work. They were the ones in the suits. Women used to stay at home, have babies. I'm talking hundreds of years ago. Nowadays, we are equal. We don't necessarily have equality, but we do have an ability to be out working, playing, living, loving, taking families into our control, understanding how to work with men. That's the job of women. And men often are not sure how to deal with this. So what we get is a lot of empowerment about women, how we can educate women better. But my goal here is that we put everybody into one circle of life, because we are not going to be without each other. In the family, in the community, in business, on the sports field, wherever we are together. And it's very important to understand how men and women can work in what I call real synergy. And synergy is the addition of all parts to make life work. And that is very important. So do men and women think, feel, and behave differently? There is a huge amount of evidence that this is true. Men tend to think in logical boxes, either or, task focused, whereas women are much more circular. Women look at round and round and round. We're often said to be very great multitaskers. Now, men can do lots of tasks, but they don't necessarily do them all at the same time. Now, of course, we're not as simple as this, but take this as a first guideline, because if we take a look at our brain scans, we can actually find that men's brains are more linear and not as much in a complex state as the women's brain, which you see on the right. There are more neural networks across the left to right brain, whereas there are more singular ones in the men. Now, much of this is evolving as we speak, but generally this is the case, that men are always focused on the task and women on the relationships. So taking that and then going further, let's take a look at this idea of difference. Men, either or, based on solutions and results. Women relating to other people to get things done, still focused on getting the job done, and actually incredibly good at being in business. So how do we communicate to ensure that, in my view, we need some authentic harmony? So I want to say goodbye in some ways to equality, have great respect for all the equal status that women and men now have, but really look at how we can evolve harmony. And whether that's collaborative harmony or competitive harmony, it's about going forward in a positive way. And remember, we're all in the circle of life. So let's take that circle and let's be practical here. I'm a magician and I'm a masculine-minded woman, and I like to create maps. So I looked around me and I thought, what is going on if we actually look at men having a focus for tasks and women having a focus for relationships, and knowing that many men and women had a more logical preference. And that's not to say that the others don't have a logical preference, but the feminine is much more intuitive, it's heart-focused. Now, we've all got a bit of all of this, but in order to understand our preferences and how we respond rather than react, it's really important that we know who we are and how we act. So let's look at our masculine-minded male, the MM. He tends to look at things in very straight lines, whereas the FM, the feminine-minded male, he maybe looks at them in slightly softer ways, but not as much as the masculine-minded female, and indeed the feminine-minded female. Remember, they're very circular. So how do we identify these? We use our archetypes. These are not personalities, and they are not gender identities. They are guidelines to help us understand each other. The ruler is the masculine male, and the philosopher is the feminine-minded male. And we might see examples in our world. Nelson Mandela, I would say, was a great philosopher, a very strong man. There are many masculine male rulers in our world. Sadly, many of them maybe not as wise as we would like, but let's not understand that just yet. Let's look at the types. So the magician, remember I said that was me? There we have the masculine-minded female who picks up that logic, but also has the internal strength of the menstrual cycle, the cycle of nurturing, and the sovereign, who is the feminine-minded female. And what we're looking at in the middle is, who am I? Who are you? Who are we? So let's focus on those three questions. Now, how do we communicate? We can look at communication as a way of building conversations, yes, and relationships, and essentially whole groups of people. So you might actually be a sports team, you might be a business, a team leader, you might be in a large family. So think about the context of individuality and collectivism. What we find is that the masculine-minded male, a ruler, remember, and the feminine-minded male, they both act in lots of straight lines, but slightly differently. So if we take a look at them in compared to the females, our masculine-minded male is very much angular. He looks at the box, works on the box, moves to the next box. Feminine-minded male, he actually asks a lot more questions and he looks at things in slightly softer lines. I've been told by philosophers that all their boxes are in a warehouse and many of them are open. But this is very different to what the feminine female is doing. She's very circular. She's looking at ways to gather everything together. She's the queen of her castle. And the magician is a chatterer. They are ideas and concepts. They still have the essential female core of nurturing, but they live in lots of conversations. The ruler, the philosopher, the magician, and the sovereign. I want you to get to know these because you might be playing out with each of these and wondering why sometimes you just conflict with somebody else because they're different. Let's take a look at the question in the middle. The ruler is telling us about the question. The philosopher will ask about the question. The magician will want to, the sovereign will want to care and the magician will want to share. And the question is, how do we connect and tune into each other? How do we get together and make real synergy? Authentic magical conversations embrace all of these archetypes. So remember, the red one and the blue one are both male, and the gold and the green are both female. You might be feeling that you're picking up all of the traits that you desire to be, all of them. If you're a man, this may mean that you're a philosopher. If you want to be both the sovereign and the magician, then probably you're the sovereign. Know and value who you are and who others are. And when you come to the table with your experience, come with your experience, not your ego. Contribute with no judgment and no anger. Act without pressure to control others and seek outcomes that are inclusive of all present. And this is why this system of archetypes works really well for groups of people, especially in a team, in a competitive team like a sports team where you really need to know each other as well as the opposition, and you need to know the rules of the game. Same is true in the boardroom and in the family situation. So the gender dynamics framework, let's look at what each archetype typically says. Remember the system, we've got 4 types, we've got different ways of acting and speaking and being. So what we find is that the ruler is going to control through bullet points. This is the way it's done, he says. The philosopher is more, the magician is more likely to say, well, I've got lots of ideas. How can I bring them to the table so that you will hear them? The sovereign is going to want to consider everybody. She's listening to the ideas, she's listening to the instruction of the ruler. But the philosopher is the very interesting catch-all. The philosopher will often say to me, I think I'm a bit of everybody. And this is because he's always questioning, is it possible? He's very interested in people and feelings and sensitivity. So men can be strong and sensitive, especially in a world where we're so uncertain. But remember the ruler, he stands strong, he talks in bullet points, and he's somewhat unemotional in delivery, whereas the philosopher is gentle. He approaches things in a slightly more caring way. But all the men are looking to organize the task of the day. Women can be assertive and caring. So remember, they're all relational, and the magician is much stronger, more independent. She's more likely to react with a I'll just get on with it. Leave me alone. Whereas the sovereign is much more gentle. Her approach is to include people, to build her territory, to know what her landscape is. She nurtures everybody through attention to detail. Now, the magic comes with all of these archetypes when we actually understand the amazing combination, the complementary nature of difference. So when we actually see the yin and the yang becomes a complete circle, that's when we need all of these characters in whatever situation we're dealing with. So remember, if you're a man, you're one of the ruler or the philosopher. If you're a woman, you're a magician or a sovereign. If you're in a transition state where you're moving from one gender biologically to another, you may be feeling the energy of a new type, and that's okay too. Remember, this is not about sexual preferences. This is about having a conversation about who we are as men and women so that we understand all those variables. And actually, we can have a conversation about allowing all sexual variations to be okay because we're inclusive. Everybody is somewhere on the map. So let's take ourselves to the next level, which is, dare I say, a little bit complicated, but it is the final dialogue between all of these different types. And we look at that map again in the middle. And I want you to just get a sense of this. This is a much more in-depth part of the training that we do with our clients. We take you into the reason why you are like the way you are. We don't tell you who you are. We work with you for you to understand that your natural archetype will become apparent in the way you deliver your conversations, your relationships, the way you lead your teams, the way you work within teams, everything about you. What I've learned as a magician is that to understand my other female sisters around the world is absolutely imperative. And that to understand men and your differences, if you're listening to this training, this is where the key is. This is just a starting point. The question is, if you know me, how do we collaborate? So briefly, there are two male archetypes, the ruler, who's more logical, action man, and the philosopher, who's more questioning, intuitive. Various images we see around. I would like you to observe around you, see how you are attracted to different types of men. And with women, there are two types. There's the magician, like myself, who's loving and a nurturer, but very, very keen on ideas and concepts. I'm in my head. That's where I respond from. And the sovereign is much more in her feelings than in her caring and her creativity. Now, everybody can be whoever they want to be. The main thing is to understand that when we're being multifaceted, how do other people tune into us? How much clarity do we give to other people? Certainly as women, in a world that we are still not enjoying custody of the world, and we are marginalized in many situations. It's very important that we understand that empowerment of women is not without the real synergy with men, and that as we understand all our natural talents, we can create a much better world. What we offer you at Corporate Heart International is a way to lead your business performance with conversations that matter. And in truth, this may impact all sorts of activities that you do, certainly in the sports arena, in a family arena, in the community arena, and definitely in business. So we work in many ways with our clients, very interactive, very experiential. We run interactive conversations, dynamic interventions where we take the message of your business and turn it into active conversations. We work one-on-one with leaders to make sure that you can manage every difficult situation and make your ride smooth to a very sustainable outcome. The impact of all of this is not just business, it's actually life. It's you as a healthy high performer, a purposeful, meaningful individual. The way you lead your company, the way you lead your team, the way you lead your family, the way you lead your life. That's what matters to us. My name is Dr. Pauline Crawford. I am the Chief Vision Officer for Corporate Art International, and I'm very passionate to bring you gender dynamics intelligence as a map that will help you create a better future, a future worth living. Thank you for listening.